All right. Welcome. So, healing the brain from overstimulation. This video is all about overstimulation, the damage it does to the brain, and then how you can actually undo that damage. Also, about the actual healing process associated with quitting these addictions, because quitting itself is actually really easy, but the recovery process is a whole nother story. So if you guys are interested in transforming your lives through self-improvement, you can go ahead and click that top link in the description for my coaching program. But without further ado, I'm going to quickly tell you guys how the healing process actually took longer for me than quitting itself, right? So I was able to remove the addictions fairly quickly, right? Social media, I had no resistance to quitting that. I wanted to be done with it anyways, so I just removed it. But the process of healing from it is what took time, right? The process of actually overcoming the damage that was done to my mind and actually refocusing back onto working, back onto exercise, back onto real day-to-day activities. This was the difficult portion. This was the difficult part. So the effects on the brain. When you are in this state of instant gratification and overstimulation, you're always seeking quick pleasure, right? You always want quick pleasure. You always want the pleasure that's in the moment right here, right now, right? And this is a problem because if we're seeking this quick pleasure, it's very difficult for us to delay gratification because we want pleasure now. We want enjoyment now. We want gratification now, but we need to be able to postpone that for our future selves if we're gonna get away from this overstimulation, get away from this instant gratification, right? So that's the first thing, is our brains become optimized to seek quick pleasure. Our brains become focused on achieving quick and easy instant pleasure instead of long-term gratification. The next thing is your balance, your pleasure-pain balance is tipped to the side of pain. Right? And so because you've been giving into this pleasure for so long, you've been getting all of this pleasure, now you are feeling the pain that is associated with the opposing force to this pleasure, right? And this pain happens as a result of your brain trying to return back to homeostasis to properly process all of that pleasure. So you are stuck on the pain side because you've been experiencing pleasure for so long. Next thing is brain rot. So if you're overstimulating with specifically like social media and even video games, right, you're going to have a sense of brain rot, which means your brain is kind of attached to these addictions. Your brain is kind of attached to certain pieces of the addiction. So if you're watching social media, there are certain videos, certain sounds that are like constantly playing in your head. My brother's really bad with this, right? He'll just randomly make random fucking noises in the middle of the day. And I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? What the hell are you doing right now? Like, why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? Why are you acting like that? He looks like a complete moron, but he does it like it's normal because he has this brain rot, which is basically just this part of his brain that is like stuck ruminating on and circulating on this specific sound from TikTok that he watched, right? So brain rot is another thing, right? Brain rot basically just means that your brain is literally fried, right? It is fried and focused on this. It's essentially focused on the content of whatever you're addicted to, right? Because these, specifically TikTok, it's made to loop, right? It's made to loop, that it loops in your mind, and then you think of that sound, and then you're like, oh, let me watch TikTok, and you go and watch TikTok, right? So it's part of keeping it as an addiction for you, but it's also just because it loops like that, your brain ends up ruminating on it and loops it inside of it as well. And then that takes up space in your mind, and that is what we call brain rot, right? That is where things like brain fog and confusion come from, because we are crowding our minds with random information. So the next actual problem is overcrowding, right? We have so much unprocessed information in our brains because we're constantly stimulating ourselves, constantly taking in more and more information, that we have this giant stockpile of unprocessed information just sitting in our brain, crowding it, right? Making us work and operate slower because of that. Because we have all this unprocessed information, right? It's like a giant pile of paperwork on the desk of your brain, just sitting there. Meanwhile, your brain is working on the other thousands of papers that are coming in every second, right? And so you have this stockpile of information that has been unprocessed, but you're also piling on more every single second that you're watching any type of content, any type of social media stimulation, whatever, right? So how to actually heal. The first thing is time. Really, the only thing you can do is give yourself time. You just need time. That's the only thing you need. That's the only thing you can really do, is give yourself the necessary time, right? That is important, though, because if you give yourself the right amount of time, you'll be able to heal, you'll be able to recover, and you'll be able to slowly but surely reintegrate back into reality, reintegrate back into living a normal life, living a functional life. And then you can actually go and pursue the things you want to, right? But it takes time to get yourself back to this state. So the only thing you can do in this amount of time is stay as far away from any type of stimulation as you can. Because anytime you stimulate your brain, you're just going to make it harder. You're going to make it take longer. You're going to make the process slower. And you're also going to just restart this whole process, right? Because if you stimulate your brain, you're going to get that dopamine spike, and then you're going to go back into another deficit. And so all you can do is stay away from that stimulation so you don't get that spike and go back into that deficit. Because then once you go back into another deficit, then it's just going to take a little bit longer to recover. So the next thing is flow state. Oh, sorry, I have one more thing to say about the last point, which is actually that if you do re-stimulate, right, if you do get another dopamine spike, what could and probably will happen, because you're already in a deficit, is you'll just get re-addicted, because it gives you that baseline again, right? It gives you that sense of enjoyment again. And so that dopamine, that stimulation is going to make you think, oh, wow, like this is all of what I've been looking for again, right? And you're going to go right back into it because you're already in a deficit and it's taking so long to heal that this stimulation and this enjoyment just becomes that much more addictive. And so you want to completely avoid it so that you can properly give yourself the amount of time needed in order to heal. So the next thing is flow state. So actually doing things that put you in a flow state, right? Because this will give you a sense of enjoyment that is greater than any dopamine spike, any type of overstimulation. And it's also the peak state of human beings. So naturally, if we are in flow state regularly, we will be happier, we will be more fulfilled. But also, it keeps us focused on the work, right? It keeps us focused on the real thing that will actually heal us, that will actually give us progress, right? If we can keep our focus there, which is what a flow state is, effortless flow, effortless focus into the work itself, right? If we can achieve a flow state on a daily basis, then we will start to destimulate the brain, first of all, because it basically shuts off the brain when you're in flow state, right? So it will actually begin to destimulate the brain, but it will also simply allow us to work towards our goals, simply allow us to make some progress. And in doing so, because we've made that little bit of progress, we get that little sense of fulfillment, right? And that little sense of fulfillment will then drive us to do the same thing again the next day, right? And so we can keep this up over a long period of time. So the next thing is work/using the mind. So we have to utilize our mind and actually go and work and go and put forth effort, even if it kind of hurts right now, even if it's kind of uncomfortable. Like, there were times when I was starting to get out of my dopamine hole, where I was working and it literally hurt. Like, my brain literally hurt to work, but you just keep going and it feels better as you go, right? Because you're decompressing, you're releasing all of this pent up energy and all of this unprocessed information. And so by using the mind, by using the brain, by putting forth effort, then you can actually start to regulate, you can start to heal, and you can start to process some of that unprocessed information. Next thing is exercise. So exercising regularly will allow us to actually release some dopamine, release some endorphins, right? Start to feel better, but also gives us something to do that is away from the overstimulation. And so don't mess yourself up. Don't fuck yourself over by going and listening to music while you work out. Just work out in the silence. It's fine, right? You're not going to die. You'll be all right. So just work out by itself, no extra stimulation. But The point of this is it gives you an activity to do away from the instant gratification, but it will also heal your brain, right? So exercise itself heals the brain, exercise itself heals the body, and just by putting forth that discipline, you're wiring that into your brain instead of instant pleasure. But also exercise itself gives you a chance to reflect. It gives you time with yourself. It gives you time to work and put forth effort. And when you exercise regularly, it will make your brain healthier naturally, and it will heal your brain up naturally. And it's just a alternative habit. The next thing is sitting in silence / observing the mind. When you sit in silence, or you're just observing your mind, observing your thoughts, right? You're spending time literally destimulating, right? Because you're taking yourself away from all of the other stimulation, and you're just sitting there and you're just resting with no other stimulation. And taking yourself out of this stimulation will give your brain time to process it all, process the state that you're in, and then regulate back to homeostasis. The other thing is observing the mind will allow you to dissolve and break down all the brain rot that has built up, and allow you to return that consciousness back to pure consciousness that you can then use to live as a normal human being instead of being in this addictive cycle, right? So sitting in silence is another key. The last thing I have is fasting. So fasting is actually going to help with the brain, because when you fast, it allows your body to clean up and clear out any baggage, any built up food that is stuck in the body, any built up baggage. But also in the mind, it is the same thing, right? So in the brain, it basically breaks down and eats away at any neurons that are damaged or dead. It breaks down any neural connections or pathways that are ineffective, and it cleans out and clears out all of the overstimulation that you've been building up, all of the unprocessed information you've been building up. And this overstimulation is basically just a state of your brain being somewhat fried, right? And so it will give you a chance to heal and basically rewire the brain from this state of overstimulation, rewire it to a state of presence, of awareness. And this state of presence and awareness is the opposite of overstimulation, right? The other thing is that it will basically, because your brain is fried, because your receptors are fried, and because your brain can't take on more bulk, more information, it's good to take this time where you're fasted, because then you are in this state of digestion, you are in this state of cleaning and clearing out all of this crowding and all of this baggage, right? So that is all I have for you guys. If you want to completely transform your lives through self-improvement, go ahead and click one of the 2 links in the description below. And if you guys want more content on this topic or topics like this, go ahead and click the subscribe button. But aside from that, that's all from me, and I'm out of here. Peace.